A legendary musician loved this movie so much, he got the director to direct his groundbreaking video just a couple years later. That story and more next. Hi everyone, welcome to Retroflix. This is your channel for TV and movie retrospectives. Today we have such a seminal movie in the suspense horror genre, at least in my opinion anyway, going back into the late 70s into the 80s when you didn't need to have a lot of blood and gore to be scary. Now certainly this had some blood and gore in it, but there was just a lot of suspense that made you, had you sitting at the edge of your seat and just being scared of what's going to be coming up, and I loved this movie. When I thought about doing what I was going to do for the next episode, this came into my mind when I came across a biography of one of the actors on here, and I thought, oh, that would be a great movie to do. I love that movie. It's just wonderful, and I think it still resonates today. No question about it. And it was the only seminal. We talked about in the intro how a legendary musician loved this movie and got the director to do his legendary music video, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit later. But it was also at the time, really brought makeup to movies into the forefront, and we'll talk about that as well a little bit later. Today's movie is a 1981 film, American Werewolf in London. This film follows two American backpackers, David and Jack, who were attacked by a werewolf while traveling in England. And they were in the moors in England, and then kept hearing these howls, and here it ended up being a werewolf. They were attacked, causing David to become a werewolf under the next full moon. And so, it goes from there again. As I say in my other videos, I'm not going to go on anymore because I don't want to ruin it for people that may not have seen it. But that's the basic synopsis of this movie. Now, the cast we're going to be looking at here, there's just really three main casts I'm going to go over on this movie. Now, let me forget, the director here is John Landis, who we actually did a movie of his earlier in National Lampoon's Animal House. We did several months ago that episode. John Landis directed this, which actually would have only been about 3 years after Animal House. The three main cast members we're going to talk about here are David Naughton, who is going to play David Kessler, Griffin Dunne, who's going to play Jack Goodman, and Griffin Dunne is actually the actor I was talking about. I came across his biography because I was looking up at his sister, who was tragically murdered back in the early 80s. And so I was reading about that story, and then Griffin Dunne, and then I looked up Griffin Dunne, and I got, oh, American Werewolf in London. Oh, that was a great movie. We got to do this for Retroflix. And then also, too, Jenny Agutter, and I don't know, it's A-G-U-T-T-E-R. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but she played Nurse Alex and plays a pivotal role when David goes into the hospital, so we'll keep it at that. I actually just saw something in her as well right after I was doing the Griffin Dunne, seeing reading about his daughter, his sister being murdered and so forth. And then I just saw an article on Jenny Agutter, who is now in her 70s, and she's in a TV movie or an actual movie. I can't remember if it's a theatrical release or a TV movie. I don't remember, but they did. There was an article done on her now, and she's in her 70s and talked about her life and so forth, which I thought was real interesting. Right after that, because I hadn't heard from her in maybe since then. So that's the cast of this movie. It's a really good cast. David Naughton actually was really huge at the time, not only with his acting, but he actually was a musician, had a song called Making It, which actually ended up going on the charts. Pretty high, I believe. I don't know how high it went, though I'd have to go and research that, and I didn't, but I'm just that's just off the cuff here with Making It. And of course, Griffin Dunne, this is one of his first big movies, and then he would go on to star in movies and television up until today. He's had a really long career. I remember him actually in an episode of Frasier. If you ever watched that sitcom, I know that the reboot is on now, but if you ever seen the actual Frasier, there was the episode where he gets befriended by the guy in a wheelchair, and the guy will not leave him alone, Frasier alone. So he tries to shoo him away. Well, that's Griffin Dunne in that episode. So, but he's at movies and television. He's still doing it today. He's had a real long career. And again, if you just talk about Jenny Agutter, and she is still acting today as well. David Naughton, I'm not sure. I didn't look up the rest of him yet, so I'm not quite sure if he's doing anything. I don't think so, but I'm not positive on that. But he was certainly big at that time. The production of American Werewolf in London, the development, we'll go in the development first, with the production of it. So let's do a little bit of a historical background of it. John Landis actually came up with this story when he was working as a production assistant on the film Kelly's Heroes back in 1970. And he was real young at the time, maybe 18 or 19, and he actually got out as he flew to be a production assistant in Eastern Europe where this movie was being shot. And according to him and a crew member were traveling back to the location of the filming of this movie when they came across a group of nomadic people performing a ritual on a body they were going to bury and doing this ritual so it wouldn't come back to life. And so that gave Landis kind of an idea that then manifested itself into American Werewolf in London. So Landis began to write this actually in 1969. Kelly's Heroes came out in 70, but they were shooting, around 1969. And then the movie came out in 70. But Landis started this in 1969, and then he shelved it for about a decade. And had, but the studios weren't, he was just a production assistant and was kind of trying to make his way in. Probably wouldn't have had anybody, to go on to that anyway. As far as the time, sorry, I don't know if you're hearing. I live by an airport and an airplane is going right past, so I don't know if it's kind of distracting me. I don't know if you could hear it on the video, but I'm not going to stop. But yeah, I don't know if you could hear that or not. But I got kind of distracted there a little bit. But anyway, got shelved for over a decade, and then Landis had some hits with movies like Kentucky Fried Movie, and then of course Animal House. So kind of made a name for himself, and then he went to Universal and talked about this movie he was in developing, and which would be American Werewolf in London, and he finished writing it, and they wanted, Universal took it over and wanted John Belushi, and Dan Aykroyd for this movie. Obviously, they were coming off of Blues Brothers. They were hot, in the stratosphere in Hollywood after that with Landis. But Landis wanted to go with really unknown actors for this movie. He didn't want to, A-listers or close to A-listers, which Belushi and Aykroyd were kind of getting at that time. Aykroyd would kind of go down a little bit downhill. John Belushi certainly was going in a stratosphere there, but and Aykroyd kind of was too. And Aykroyd kind of had a career lull in a few years, and then of course Ghostbusters sent him back up. But they were certainly known. He wanted to go with some really relatively unknown actors at that time, which Naughton and Dunne certainly were. And so they ended up, making this movie with those actors. Landis shot this between February and March of 1981. And he actually wanted to do it at that time because of the poor weather he would have in the UK. Now, this is set in England. Majority of this, where you see like the moors and the moor scenes and the slaughtered lamb, which is the pub. Those scenes there are actually shot in Wales. And so you see those time of the year, the weather is just really bad, rainy and cold, but that's what Landis wanted for those scenes, so he wanted to make sure he was shooting at that time of the year, and it certainly gave him what he wanted, that poor weather. Again, the pub in the film is actually a cottage in Dunne, Wales. So if you watch the movie and see that, that's what that is. And but they also needed to shoot, though, in London. And he wanted to shoot in Piccadilly Circus. But nobody had shot a movie in Piccadilly Circus for 15 years. And so Landis went to the Metropolitan Police and invited them into a screening of the Blues Brothers. And so he had all these police in to see this movie, and they loved it so much that they permitted Landis 2 evenings and overnight, 2 nights to be able to shoot his movie there. So they gave him a permit for 2 nights, and so they were shooting in Piccadilly Circus kind of overnight there for 2 nights, which is kind of interesting little story there. An American Werewolf in London was released on August 21st, 1981. It would go on to gross $30 million in the United States and $62 million worldwide against a $6 million budget. So very profitable for them, particularly when you look at 1981. It was very successful. It was the 11th highest grossing film of 1981, so just missed the top 10, but very successful film. And then would end up having a great run on VHS, as in the early 80s, you start to have VCRs coming. We've talked about this many times before, that perfect storm of cable television, especially those premium channels like HBO and the VCR coming into homes, and this certainly caught that wave, and through VHS, and then of course HBO, which is where I saw it the first time. When I saw it as a kid, was on HBO. And then had that on a videotape for a while, actually. So it started to actually get a great run with that, and getting a lot more of an audience too outside the theaters when that happened. And let's go to our intro there. So the legendary musician that liked this movie and got John Landis to direct his legendary landmark video. Anybody know out there? Anybody? Well, if you said Michael Jackson being the musician and the video being Thriller, you would be right. Yes, Michael Jackson loved this movie, thought it was really well done. And of course, Landis, doing this movie, he was like, wow, you know what? I would really love to have that guy do this video that I'm thinking about doing, that's really going to take the top off of the music industry, and particularly the video industry, now that MTV had just started. MTV started this year that American Werewolf in London was released. As a matter of fact, it was only about, I think, maybe 19, 20 days before the release of American Werewolf in London that MTV began. So Michael Jackson, come like 1983, really thought about doing a kind of like more of like a short movie for his video, and recruited Landis because he liked American Werewolf in London so much. And then Landis did it, and the rest is history. It is maybe, of course there's a lot of good videos now of what they did over the years. At the time, obviously, that was groundbreaking, but it's still today regarded as one of the best videos ever made, and certainly was influential to a point that you couldn't even imagine. And you see the videos that have been made over the last 40 years, even up to today, those probably, I don't know, maybe they're not made if it wasn't for Thriller. I don't know, but certainly it was very influential. This movie is very influential to Michael Jackson to get Landis to do his Thriller video. A sequel was done, American Werewolf in Paris. but it was with a different cast and crew. It had nothing to do with the American Werewolf in London cast or crew, and it pretty much bombed at the box office. It did win the first ever. Now this is where at the beginning I said I talked about something seminal, you know, as far as this movie goes too. Not only with the influence it had in the suspense and horror genre, but also with makeup. And American Werewolf in London won the first ever Academy Award for makeup. And so if you see this movie, you'll see, particularly on Griffin Dunne, the makeup that was made for his character. And I'll just leave it at that. But if you see that, you know, look at the, yeah, and you know, obviously what they've been doing, you know, the last, you know, who knows, but obviously today, even the last 20, 25 years or whatever, you know, that's not going to seem to be a big deal. But 1981, that was a huge thing. That makeup that they did there was something that was really awe-inspiring in 1981. And obviously they saw that coming because they started making an Academy Award for it, which this won the very first one. So where can you watch this video? Well, I have great news for you. There's a lot of free channels that you can watch this. Now, if you want to rent it off Vudu, you certainly can. It's there. If you have an AMC Plus subscription, you certainly can watch it there, or get one if you want to. That's certainly fine. But there are several free places you can get this movie right now. Roku channel, Tubi, Pluto TV, Plex, and Freevee. Any of those, you can get it for free. So please go on. If you've never watched this, please go on and see it. Comment, tell me down below. Tell me what you think of this movie. If you haven't saw it in a long time, watch it again. Tell us what you think of it. Or, you know, if you still have a lot of memories and don't want to watch it again, still comment down what's your memories of this movie. I just remember this being one of the, I mean, again, I probably saw on HBO. Well, it came out in 81, so I'm guessing probably we got HBO around 83. So probably around then I ended up seeing on HBO, and it definitely scared me, but I kept watching it over and over again, you know, and just loved it. And of course, like I said, when we got a VCR, it was still on its rotation, because it would still be in rotation of HBO quite a bit, and I taped it and had that and would keep watching it. So it was definitely something, a movie that I think was just wonderful, and I think would still stand the test of time today. I mean, you can see just how many places this movie is playing right now and streaming. And I don't think they'd be doing that unless it's being viewed. Thank you very much for being here. Again, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, that's a wrap.